Hey everybody, I'm Mike Solomon. I'm the broker in charge here at Coldwell Banker Advantage in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Thanks for stopping by. Today I'm going to do myth to reality, maybe busting some realtor myths, and I got 11 for you. So I went to Google and I kind of deep dive and I found out what people are asking about real estate agents. So I'm going to try to answer some of those questions. Number one, do realtors ever have a day off? Long answer, right? So first of all, most realtors, at least here locally, and most that I know of, are independent contractors and are allowed to make their own schedule. So does a realtor have a day off? That's up to the realtor. Now that's a double-edged sword though. Nobody's going to call you at your house and say, where are you today? If you're in real estate, if you're an agent, they're not going to say, hey, you're late for work, anything like that. But the more you put into real estate as an agent, the more you will get out of it. So should you take a day off? There's a balance. You always have to protect this, meaning burnout is a real thing in real estate. It can be stressful, so you have to program some time off, but you have to do it at the right time. Sometimes it's seasonal, sometimes it's because a lot of transactions close and maybe some of them are stressful and I need some time off. But generally, if you're just starting in real estate, you should be, in my opinion, putting several days a week into prospecting and building your database. So do realtors ever have a day off? That's totally up to the realtor. But the double-edged sword is you will get what you put into it. Next one, what does a real estate agent's day-to-day look like? Another interesting one. And I'm sure that if you're exploring real estate, you're wondering about some of the nitty-gritties, one of those, a day in the life, what does it really look like? A day-to-day for a realtor can vary a lot. First of all, there's a lot of different niches in real estate, everything from property management to residential sales to new construction sales to commercial sales, land sales. There's a lot of different aspects and a lot of niches. So what the day-to-day looks like, one could vary greatly depending on which niche you have, but it can also very much depending on the market conditions. The seasonality sometimes is a driving force. Sometimes that agent's day is completely enthralled with contract items like problems, repair requests, administrative parts of real estate. If business is a little slower, that day may be prospecting, making phone calls, attending network events. You could start your morning on the other end of town showing homes, and you could end your day on the other end of town at a listing presentation. Most of the time, in general, ideally what a day should look like for a realtor, an active full-time producing realtor should start off in the morning somewhere in the neighborhood of administrative tasks, answering emails, handling outstandings. There's a saying in this business, working on your business and working in your business, meaning working on things that will grow my business, making phone calls, writing letters, etc., and then working in my business, like showing homes and listing appointments. So it should be a full day in most cases, again, if that person is an active, full-time, fully engaged realtor. But the day-to-day can vary a lot depending on what's on the plate for that day. Quite often, the plan you had for that day might go out of the window. You might get a surprise phone call from a client or a prospect that you've been working on, and they're all of a sudden ready to go show, and they're super motivated right now, and they're like, when can we get started? You may throw out the window everything you had planned for that day to work with that client. Sometimes the opposite happens, and there are so many fires, as we say, that put out that we don't have the ability to change course. We've got to get these things done. All right, the next one, what is the 80-20 rule in real estate? And that should actually be, what is the 80-20 rule, period? I'm sure that if we've all experienced this in our lives, inside and outside of real estate, even being prior military, it was a factor. 80% of the people do, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. 20% of the people do 80% of the work. And in some areas and some firms, that could be more or less. There's a 90-10 rule where 10% of the people do 90% of the work. And again, going back to the first question, everybody's an independent contractor and can set their own goals and sell as little or as many properties that they want. But generally, the 80-20 rule varies. The numbers vary, but a small number of people handle the most production for that firm or that office or that local area in real estate. So the other 80% do 20% of the business. And I don't think that's anything unique to real estate. It is more impactful in real estate, though, and why you see varying production between agents differences and income differences. So it says, why do so many real estate agents quit? I think that's expectations. What this person asked that question online was referencing is there is a 70% attrition rate in real estate among new agents. That's the last I heard. It could be a little lower, a little higher right now. I'd say that number is pretty accurate, and I would go back and say that was about expectations. Many people get into real estate because generally it has a pretty low barrier to entry with a very high income potential in a lot of cases. So a lot of people are attracted to the business. They're attracted to the flexibility of it. I set my own schedule of it. I've watched a video or read a book that you can make 6 figures in a year. And while some of that's true, and it can be true, so many realtors quit because I think that they're looking for a magic button. There's a misconception of what the day-to-day is and what it takes to actually sell real estate. The hardest part of this business is the prospecting and getting the clients to work with. And that's what people don't realize. I think that's the biggest gap. People don't tell real estate schools are teaching real estate laws and rules and things you can't get into, but there's usually, and it's not their responsibility at that school level to satisfy the state commission requirements, to talk to them about how real estate really is in reality. The goal of that school is to make sure they know what they can and can't do and understand license rules in North Carolina, in our case, general statutes that apply to real estate. So a lot of people don't understand when you come and join a real estate firm, there isn't this giant book of leads that a sales manager is going to hand you and say, start calling and you're going to close deals. You got to get out. And there's a saying we have, it's called getting yourself out there. And that can mean so many different things, different video. But people don't understand that the effort and work it takes to start a real estate business is the same effort and work it takes to start any other business. If I have a lawn care company, I've got to find people to cut lawns with. I either got to go knock on doors or buy internet ads or signage. And the same thing in real estate is we've got to find the people to work with. And that's a really hard thing to do. If you're in sales, you understand that and can usually apply those sales skills to real estate as well. So that's why I think the attrition rate is 70%. Next up, is being a real estate agent stressful? I would say yes. The general answer to that one is yes. There are transactions that are smooth as butter that just go great and everybody's on the same page with the same goals. And we've got a great buyer and a great seller and a great buyer's agent, a great listing agent. Everybody's working together in finding out what's important to the other parties and putting good transactions together that benefit all parties. But it can be stressful when those folks aren't on the same page. And there is inherently an adversarial relationship between sides of a real estate transaction. I mean, the buyer side and the seller side. The listing side and the listing agent is trying to get the seller the maximum amount of value they can for their property. And the buyer's agent on the buy side is trying to get the buyer the best deal. So that has an inherent adversarial relationship to it. When it gets stressful is that when people don't communicate or there is a legal issue that a realtor has to bring in an expert on. Things can get stressful when there aren't enough sales. Back to my last question, if we don't have any prospecting going on and we don't have anybody writing contracts, real estate can get pretty stressful because we don't know when the next paycheck's coming. So there is stress involved with it. High producing agents experience this a lot because there are only a certain amount of hours in the day and they're trying to balance between bringing in new business and prospecting, handling the contracts and clients that they have now, and thinking about the future of their business and keeping the cycle going and making sure everybody's happy and making sure that those clients are return clients. So there is a lot of stress involved in it. I think a lot of it will depend on production levels. If you're a new agent, you should be pretty stressed. If you're very busy, you'll be pretty stressed. A lot of people find a happy median and find a number of transactions and a prospecting plan that works for them and reduces that stress level. But there is stress in real estate because we are reactive a lot of times. How do you spot a bad real estate agent? Tough one. Like any business, there's great realtors and there's not so great realtors. It's like anything else in the world, at any company probably or any organization. How to spot a bad realtor though? I think it comes down to communication. If you are making phone calls or texts or reaching out and the communication level that you expect is not reciprocal, I'm not going to ever say anybody's a bad agent, but that would definitely be a red flag to me. Other ways to spot a quote unquote bad agent would be to evaluate the relationship. And this is really hard to see sometimes. And you hear things and stories about agents pushing up sales prices to get a higher commission, which I don't think is a thing because there's a nominal difference. But to bring it back around, we have got to have our client's best interest in mind. And if an agent were to put the best interest of themselves or the commission check above that client, I think that would qualify them as quote unquote a bad agent. How to find a good real estate agent? Great question. A lot of times word of mouth is probably one of the best ways to find a good agent. You talk to somebody that had a great experience listing or buying their house. That's usually a pretty good indicator. Like anything else, I think about going to Amazon and just shopping for something online. And one of the first things we do is we read reviews, and we want to look at the good reviews and we want to look at the bad reviews. I think that's a great way to spot and find a great agent is if people have taken their time to find that agent's review platform, whether it's Google or Zillow or anything like that, and to talk great about that agent, I think you've spotted a pretty good one. A responsive agent that takes time to educate, because that's what we do. We're educating about the home buying or selling process. That's an indicator you got a good agent. How much do real estate agents make? Good one. And another one that can vary greatly. How much do real estate agents make? There is a statistic nationwide that the average real estate agent makes $47,500. That, to best of my recollection, is probably 2 or 3 years in the past that I heard that. But go back to that first one, why so many agents quit and that attrition rate at 70% in the 80-20 rule. If 80% of people are only doing 20% of the business, their income level is not going to be necessarily as high as that 20% doing the 80% of the business. So that's the average that I've heard. Can't quote a source on it because I can't remember. But 47,500, somewhere around there. And it seems very accurate from where I sit. Now, how much can you make? It's sales. And that's the great thing about sales, whether it's real estate sales or any other kind of sales. Sky's really the limit on a commission-based program. So the more houses you sell, the more commissions you make, and the more clients that you meet, the more relationships that you have, which means more sales later. So how much can you make? The sky's the limit. I'm talking to you here out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. We have a very moderate average sales price. As of today, it's probably floating around the $285,000 range. And real estate commissions are completely negotiable and are very dependent on different markets. So if you use like an average, commission that is charged a seller with an average sales price, you can see that the income potential, even here in our area, is significant. It's pretty good. You can make well over six figures, with the proper work ethic, education, and plugging in and closing properties. How much can they make? That's hard to put a number on, but honestly and truly, the sky's the limit. It depends on how much you put into it. Of course, on the other end of the spectrum, no houses mean no commission, no paychecks. Can you do real estate part-time? It can happen, yes. Part-time agents, I know many part-time agents that are successful. They have careers that align with relationships and meeting and talking to people, and they may want to do it for the family and friends. Again, I know some great part-time agents. Some of the challenges with that is education. If you're working a full-time job and treating real estate as a part-time side hustle, it's hard to get in at a 9 to 5 office environment and get the education and current trends that you need. Absolutely, people can overcome that and still plug in and still learn what they need to learn and know what they need to know and work with people on their hours. It can be sort of inhibiting to have another career in real estate, though, because again, we're really reactive sometimes. And I may get that lead that I've been working on for a long time that's ready to go show houses today. And if I have another job, it would be tough to do. So to answer the question, can you do real estate part-time? Yes. Is it ideal? For some people, maybe. For some people, it may, their other career may just totally align with it in some sort of flexible schedule, or they own their own business where maybe they've hired a manager or their staff there that can run that and they can step away a little bit and work real estate. But generally, it is a full-time career, and that's the kind of agents that you see succeed the most in this business. Do real estate agents make their own hours? I'll default back to the first one. Do real estate agents have a day off? Yes, technically. Most, again, and there are probably exceptions. Most here in my local area are independent contractors and they're associates to their real estate firm, and they can make their own hours. The sales manager, or in real estate terms, the broker in charge, is probably not going to call a real estate agent and say, hey, I haven't seen you today. Where are you at? What are you doing? That just doesn't happen. It's a business where you do get to design your own hours. But then I go back to the 80-20 rule. Do you want to make your own hours and work, 10 to 1, 4 days a week? Because it takes more than that to build a substantial client base of people that you can call and talk to and market your new properties to. So last one, why do real estate agents need licenses? Why can't you just go and meet people and put a buyer and a seller together? The reason we need licenses, I think all 50 states in the United States probably have some sort of real estate commission. I know I can speak for North Carolina because I'm a North Carolina real estate broker. We have what's called the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. It's a quasi-government organization that is our licensing authority. And our rules that we go by as licensed real estate professionals are NC general statutes, or basically laws. So real estate school teaches us those rules and laws, and it gives us left and right limits of what we can and can't do as a licensed professional. For example, a great example is we learn how that we can evaluate a property and give a most probable sales price range, but we're not licensed appraisers, so we can't give a sales price. We learn all kinds of different things about representations. When do we have to say if a property has a foundation issue? Those are called material facts, and you learn about that in school. And at the end of school, you take a test with your school, and then you take a state license test. And when you pass that state license test, you then get your license. In the state of North Carolina, the North Carolina Real Estate Commission says this person is competent enough to work with the public and guide them through a real estate transaction of some sort. So why we need licenses is the answer is we have to be certified that we are able to discuss and educate and advise and walk through somebody through a real estate transaction without harming them. Our real estate commission's goal is to protect the public from uneducated people that may not know about a real estate transaction. There's a lot of nuances in a real estate transaction, in the documents that we use, that we have to be educated on. And again, the licensing is that certification that says this person has been trained and understands what they're not allowed to do and what they're allowed to do and what they can say and what they can't say. So a license is like a ticket. It's a certification saying, I'm trained. North Carolina says I'm good to go sell houses and work with people during the biggest investment they'll ever make in their life. So thanks for tuning in. That was 11 real estate myths that we discussed and maybe busted or confirmed. My name is Mike Solomon. Again, I'm the broker in charge of Coldwell Banker Advantage in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And as always, you can always reach out to us, 910-483-5353. We can help you find a realtor anywhere in the world, even though we're based out of Fayetteville, North Carolina here. call that number, ask for Mike Solomon, and I will get you hooked up with a phenomenal real estate agent here locally, or I will make sure you find one in your state, in your area.